The city never slept, and neither did the energy in MJ's club. Neon lights pulsed against the sleek black interiors, and the faint scent of expensive perfume mixed with the aroma of freshly poured cocktails. Amara Johnson had worked behind bars long enough to recognize patterns, moods, and the kind of people who thought a pretty face was all it took to impress. But tonight felt different. She moved with quiet confidence, balancing glasses, shaking cocktails, and dodging the occasional overly flirtatious patron. Most nights, the crowd blurred into background noise, a predictable mix of regulars and social climbers. But then he walked in. Minjun Kim, MJ to anyone who dared speak his name aloud in his presence, entered the club and the room seemed to catch its breath. Women turned heads, whispers floated through the air, and even the DJ paused for just a moment to acknowledge him. MJ wasn't just handsome. He carried an air of command that made the word attention feel insufficient. Yet, despite all the glamour, Amara didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the cocktail shaker, refusing to look up. He noticed, of course. That was the problem, or the thrill depending on how he looked at it. MJ approached the bar with measured steps, his eyes scanning the crowd until they settled on her. She looked up briefly, meeting his gaze with a polite nod, and then returned to her work. Most women would have smiled, blushed, or even giggled. Not Amara. She was unreadable, composed, and it irritated him in the best way. "Busy night?" MJ asked, his voice smooth, almost teasing. "Always," she replied without looking up, her tone neutral but not unfriendly. He chuckled softly, leaning on the polished bar top. "I like that. No fuss, no flattery, just work." Amara finally glanced at him, studying his sharp features, the effortless poise, and the kind of confidence that made people either follow or fear him. She raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Someone who appreciates honesty," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I see a lot of charm here but not much distraction." "That's rare." She shook her head with a hint of amusement, returning her focus to the drinks. Still, she couldn't deny a flutter in her chest, one she would never admit aloud. For the first time in months she was intrigued. MJ lingered, watching her skillfully pour and mix, resisting the urge to step in. This wasn't about impressing her. He wanted to understand her. And for reasons even he didn't yet comprehend, he wasn't ready to leave. As the night carried on, the music thumped, laughter erupted, and glasses clinked. But between the bartender and the man who could have anyone, a quiet game had begun, one that neither would walk away from easily. The night was in full swing, the kind where the music thrummed through your bones and the chatter of patrons became part of the rhythm. Amara had settled into her flow behind the bar, her hands moving with practiced ease, sliding glasses across the polished surface, garnishing drinks, and keeping an eye on the occasional overzealous customer. She liked control, her domain behind the bar was hers alone, and nothing disrupted that rhythm. Almost nothing. MJ had spent the last half hour observing her from a distance, leaning casually against the edge of the bar without making his presence obvious. Most people would have been dazzled, maybe even flustered, by his attention, but Amara remained composed, moving as if she didn't notice him at all. "You like that?" "A lot." Then, as if by some small twist of fate, a tray of drinks tipped too far, spilling a mix of cocktails across the counter. Amara's reflexes were sharp, but she could feel the weight of the busy night pressing down, threatening a moment of chaos. MJ was already there before she even realized she might need help. "Here," he said smoothly, grabbing the tray with a precision that made her blink. "Balance it like this, then lift with your elbows." Amara froze for a heartbeat, then gave a small, reluctant smile. "Thanks. I've got it from here." MJ chuckled softly, setting the tray back down. "I'm sure you do." "Just offering a little assistance." There was a pause, the kind that didn't feel awkward but electric. Amara's hands resumed their rhythm, but her mind lingered on his presence, noticing how he blended confidence with subtle attentiveness. Most men in his position would have thrown money, flattery, or authority at her. Not MJ. He simply offered a hand, and that gesture felt different, respectful even. "You work well under pressure," he said quietly, almost as an observation rather than a compliment. She glanced up, meeting his eyes for a fraction of a second before focusing back on the task at hand. "Experience," she replied tersely, though not without warmth. He smiled, a small curve of lips that didn't need words to communicate interest. It wasn't about the club, the women fawning over him, or even the power he held in his world. It was about her, Amara, composed and steady, untouchable by the usual temptations. As the crowd thinned slightly, he lingered, not pushing, not crowding, just observing. The subtle connection between them had begun, quiet but undeniable. Neither spoke again for the rest of the busy set, yet the air between them was heavier, charged. Something was building, and both knew this night would be remembered, not for the music, the cocktails, or even the club, but for the brief, meaningful moments shared over spilled drinks and careful hands. The city streets were alive with late-night lights, the kind that made ordinary sidewalks feel cinematic. Amara stepped out of the club, the cool night air brushing against her skin like a reminder that the world existed beyond the pulsing neon and clinking glasses. She usually walked alone, enjoying the quiet after the chaos, but tonight felt different. MJ was there. Not in the way most people expected, a grand gesture or dramatic chase, but simply standing near the entrance, casually leaning against a sleek black car, his gaze scanning the streets until it landed on her. For a heartbeat, the bustling city faded. "You leave so soon?" he asked, voice low, effortless, carrying that same quiet authority that made everyone notice him inside the club. Amara raised an eyebrow, pausing mid-step. "I like walking at night. Helps me think." He tilted his head as if studying her, the corner of his lips curling slightly. "May I walk with you then? Only if you don't mind company." She considered it for a moment, caught off guard by how naturally it sounded, and finally nodded. "I don't mind." Side by side, they moved down the sidewalk, their conversation starting cautiously but gaining rhythm. At first it was small talk, the kind about how the night had gone, the unpredictability of patrons, the city lights, but slowly, it drifted into something more personal. Amara mentioned her dreams beyond bartending, her desire to carve out a life defined by her own terms. MJ shared stories of running the club, the weight of responsibility, and the delicate balance between business and the secret world he protected fiercely. There was laughter too, soft and genuine, the kind that filled the quiet spaces between words. He noticed how she observed everything carefully, the subtle way she reacted to street sounds or passing cars. She noticed how he never demanded attention, how he listened with patience and curiosity rather than expectation. When they reached a quiet corner, away from the hum of traffic, Amara stopped. MJ mirrored her movements instinctively. For a long moment they just stood there, the night wrapping around them like a cloak, the city a distant hum behind their shared bubble. Finally, without words, they hugged. Not a fleeting, polite gesture, but a long, warm embrace that felt like a promise, of understanding, of protection, of beginnings. It was brief, yet lingering enough to leave both aware of a connection neither could ignore. When they stepped apart, Amara felt a flutter she refused to name. MJ's eyes held a mix of curiosity and admiration, the kind that said he wanted to see more of her, beyond the bar, beyond the club, beyond appearances. And for the first time, the night felt like it wasn't just another shift. It felt like the start of something neither expected, yet both had been waiting for. The following evening, the club was humming with energy again, brighter and louder than any ordinary night. Amara moved behind the bar with practiced efficiency, sliding bottles across the counter, pouring drinks with the precision that had earned her respect among the staff and patrons alike. She barely noticed the usual stares from the crowd, until she felt it, the unmistakable weight of eyes watching her, tracking her every move. MJ had arrived early, not as a guest, not as the man everyone in the room whispered about, but simply as himself. He lingered near the back, observing rather than being observed, his presence commanding without demanding. Amara caught sight of him from across the room and felt the faint pull of curiosity. She had kept her distance before, wary of the world he inhabited, but there was something different tonight, an unspoken invitation hanging in the air. It came sooner than she expected. A gentle tap on her shoulder turned her to find MJ smiling down at her, his gaze warm yet unreadable. "Amara," he said smoothly, "I'm hosting a small event in the VIP lounge tonight. I'd like for you to join me." She blinked, caught off guard. I don't usually attend those things," she said cautiously, her voice steady though her heart skipped a beat. "It's not a formal invitation," he replied, shrugging lightly. "Just a chance to see the club from a different perspective. You're welcome to leave anytime." Curiosity got the better of her. "All right, I'll come." The VIP lounge was quieter than the main floor, dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of conversations and laughter. Amara felt slightly out of place, surrounded by people who saw her as just another guest. But MJ was different. He navigated the room effortlessly, subtly ensuring her comfort, introducing her to a few trusted associates, and quietly shielding her from unwanted attention. As the night progressed, other women tried their usual tactics, smiles, light touches, flirtatious laughter, but Amara remained her composed self, uninterested. MJ noticed, and without making a scene, He leaned in to give her a brief, protective hug when the crowd surged around them. The gesture was subtle, but it spoke volumes. She felt seen, respected, and oddly safe in a way she hadn't expected in this glamorous, chaotic world. For the first time, Amara realized that MJ's charm wasn't for show, it was intentional. And for reasons she didn't fully understand yet, she was the only one who mattered to him in that moment. By the time the night ended, the club was quieting down. Amara walked away from the VIP lounge with a new awareness. The connection between them was no longer a fleeting curiosity, it was real, palpable, and quietly undeniable. The club was quiet now, the kind of silence that comes after the music fades and the last patrons leave. Amara wiped down the counters, her movements slow, thoughtful, the adrenaline of the night still lingering in her veins. It was during these quiet moments that she often reflected on the people who came and went, the fleeting connections, and the stories behind every smile or sigh. Tonight, however, her thoughts kept returning to one person, MJ. He appeared in the lounge without warning, leaning casually against a corner, his expression soft yet focused. "You stayed late," he observed, not as a reprimand but as a simple acknowledgement. "I like the quiet after everyone leaves," she replied, setting down a glass with a faint clink. "It's when the real work happens. The thinking, the planning, she trailed off, unsure if she should continue. MJ's presence as always made honesty easier. He leaned forward slightly, attentive as though every word mattered. "The real you," he prompted gently. Amara chuckled softly. "Maybe. I like knowing what I can control, what I can fix, what I can create. Life feels messy enough already." He nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I understand that more than you might think. Running this club, keeping everything in order, it's constant. But it's different when someone understands you without judgment." A pause stretched between them, not uncomfortable but charged with quiet anticipation. Amara realized she was revealing more than she had intended, yet MJ's calm, patient demeanor made it safe. She found herself sharing dreams she rarely spoke aloud, the desire to travel, to carve her own path, to do something meaningful beyond the bar. "And you?" she asked softly, tilting her head. "Do you ever get tired of it all?" MJ's gaze softened. "Every day," he admitted quietly. "But then I remember why I started, who I protect, and who I care about. That makes it worth it." There was a moment of understanding that needed no words. Slowly, instinctively they shared a hug. Not rushed, not fleeting but lingering, a quiet promise of trust, connection, and a growing bond that neither had to define yet. Amara felt warmth spread through her chest, a mix of comfort and anticipation, and MJ felt the same. A rare sense of peace with someone who saw him, truly saw him, beyond the club, beyond the reputation. When they finally stepped back, neither spoke immediately. Words weren't needed. The quiet hum of the empty club wrapped around them, and in that space, both knew something important had begun. The next few nights at the club felt different, even to the regulars who thought they knew MJ. Women flocked around him as usual, drawn to his charm, his quiet authority, and that effortless smile that could disarm anyone. But Amara noticed it too, the subtle shift in his attention, the way his gaze often lingered on her across the crowded room. She wasn't blind to the whispers or the glances from the other women. Some tried to laugh too loudly near him, to brush shoulders casually, or to make excuses for prolonged conversations. Most would have irritated her before, but tonight her mind wasn't on them, it was on MJ. The knowledge that he seemed to notice no one but her made her heart race in ways she couldn't fully explain. He, of course, noticed her noticing. From across the bar, MJ observed her quiet composure, the way she moved with skill and confidence despite the crowd pressing in. A few times he subtly intervened, distracting a persistent admirer, redirecting conversation, or offering Amara a protective smile from across the room. No grand gestures, no drama. Just presence, awareness, care. At one point, the pressure of attention became too much for Amara. She stepped away from the bar and leaned against the railing overlooking the lounge, taking a deep breath. MJ followed, moving silently to stand beside her. "You okay?" he asked softly, eyes scanning her face for any sign of discomfort. She nodded, though her pulse betrayed her. "I'm fine, just noticing things." "I've noticed them too," he admitted almost quietly, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "And I don't mind." "Not at all." The words struck her more than she expected. She turned to him, searching his expression, looking for hidden meaning, hidden motives, but found only honesty and warmth. I think I like that you notice me," she said finally, almost whispering. "That you're here." MJ smiled, and without hesitation, he pulled her into a firm, comforting hug. It wasn't casual, It was intentional, protective, and tender all at once. Amara rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For a moment, the noise of the club, the stairs, the world outside, none of it mattered. When they finally stepped apart, their eyes met with a shared understanding. Words weren't needed, the hug had said enough. Something had shifted, acknowledgement, attraction, and the first real confession of feeling without needing to speak it aloud. The night continued, but Amara knew that from here things wouldn't be the same. Neither of them would pretend anymore. The morning after a long night at the club, Amara was surprised to receive a message from MJ. It was brief, casual, almost teasing. "Coffee? I promise no club talk." She hesitated, then smiled. There was something about his simplicity that contrasted with the grandeur and chaos of the nights at the lounge. She agreed. By the time she arrived at the small, sunlit cafe he had chosen, MJ was already seated, reading a newspaper, though his sharp eyes immediately noticed her as she walked in. He stood, a polite smile on his face, and held the door open for her. "Good morning," he said, voice low, smooth, but carrying that effortless charm she had grown accustomed to noticing. "Morning," she replied, a hint of curiosity in her tone. They sat, ordered coffee, and the conversation started lightly. Music, books, the latest happenings in the city. For once there was no pressure, no stares, no expectations. Just two people connecting over quiet laughter and shared smiles. At first it was playful teasing, a competition over who could make the other laugh first. MJ mocked her careful choice of sugar, she pretended to be unimpressed by his exaggerated coffee sip. It was mundane, yet it felt extraordinary in the contrast to the glitz of the club. Slowly their conversation drifted deeper. MJ shared childhood memories of Seoul, the city streets he loved before life had forced him into responsibilities beyond his age. Amara spoke of her dreams, her family, her love for simple things in life, moments people often overlooked. He listened, genuinely, leaning slightly closer, absorbing every word as if each detail mattered. At one point, a light drizzle began outside. Amara pulled her jacket tighter, and MJ instinctively offered his arm. "Shall we walk a bit?" he asked. She hesitated, then linked her arm with his, feeling an unexpected warmth. As they strolled down the quiet streets, the city alive yet calm in the rain, they laughed, shared stories, and noticed small things about each other. An expression, a laugh, the way one tucked hair behind an ear. It felt effortless, natural. And then, under a softly glowing street lamp, he stopped. She looked up, and without a word, MJ wrapped her in a long, gentle hug. Not rushed, not fleeting, but a deliberate, warm embrace that left both of them quietly aware of the growing closeness between them. Amara rested her head on his chest, feeling the comfort of trust, care, and something more, something neither was ready to name, yet both understood. When they finally stepped apart, the rain had stopped, but the connection lingered. The day had begun as a simple coffee outing, yet it ended with the quiet realization that they were no longer just two people navigating a club, they were beginning something neither of them could ignore. The club had a different energy that night, heavier, tense, as if something unseen was pressing down on every corner. Amara moved behind the bar, trying to keep her focus on the routine, but she could feel it. Patrons were unusually restless, whispers ricocheting off the walls, the kind of subtle warning that only those attuned to the space could notice. MJ didn't move through the crowd as usual. Instead, he lingered near the entrance, eyes scanning every corner, every face. Something was off. The calm confidence he usually carried had a sharper edge tonight, a protective alertness that Amara had never seen. She noticed it immediately. When a group of strangers approached the bar, causing a ripple of tension, MJ stepped in, not loudly, not violently, but with the quiet authority that made them pause. Amara observed him closely, noting how seamlessly he balanced charm and control, defusing the situation without drawing attention from the crowd. "Stay close," he murmured when he reached her side, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in a subtle, protective gesture. Amara felt a shiver, not of fear but of reassurance. She nodded, grateful for his presence, yet aware of the unspoken tension surrounding them. The night moved slowly, each moment stretching as if testing patience, skill, and composure. Amara found herself watching MJ more than the patrons, fascinated by the way he navigated danger with calm precision. When he noticed her gaze, he gave her a small, reassuring smile, as if silently telling her that everything would be okay. Later, when a particularly tense encounter threatened to escalate, Amara instinctively acted, using her knowledge of the bar and patrons to de-escalate the situation. MJ noticed immediately, a spark of admiration in his eyes. Without a word, He drew her close in a firm, protective hug, long enough to ground both of them, warm enough to remind them that they weren't alone. For the first time, Amara realized that their bond went beyond attraction or curiosity. It was trust, mutual, unspoken, and growing. She could see it in the way he watched her, relied on her instincts, and ensured her safety. And MJ saw it in her confidence, her courage, and her refusal to be intimidated. By the time the night ended and the club returned to its usual rhythm, the tension had passed, but something had changed between them. That protective hug, that shared understanding, had left a mark neither would forget. For both, the world of flashing lights and murmured admiration no longer mattered. What mattered was the connection that had been tested and had proven unshakable. The club had emptied, leaving only the soft hum of cleaning machines and the faint echo of the night's music. Amara sat on a stool behind the bar, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, reflecting on the past few weeks, the crowded nights, the stolen glances, the subtle ways MJ had made her feel seen. She realized that the curiosity she had felt at first had grown into something deeper, something she could no longer ignore. MJ appeared quietly, leaning against the bar with a smile that was softer than usual, almost vulnerable. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice low, casual, yet carrying a warmth that made her heart skip a beat. "Not at all," she replied, shifting slightly to make room. Their shoulders brushed, and for a moment words were unnecessary. They talked, first lightly, about the club, the slow nights, and the rare calm moments, but soon their conversation turned inward. Amara found herself admitting the fears she had about his world, about the dangers that always seemed to hover just out of sight. She expected him to brush it off or reassure her with charm, but instead, MJ listened, truly listened. "I won't lie," he said finally, meeting her eyes, "my life isn't simple. But if I could promise you one thing, it's that I would always keep you safe. And I would never stop caring about you." Her breath caught, the words resonating deeper than she had anticipated. She realized that what she felt for him wasn't just admiration or attraction, it was love. And judging by the way he looked at her, she knew it was reciprocated. Without thinking, they moved closer. This time, the hug wasn't brief or hesitant. It was steady, grounding, a quiet declaration. Amara rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, and MJ held her with a tenderness that spoke of promises, devotion, and a future neither of them needed to define in words. When they finally stepped apart, Amara's eyes met his and she could see it, the same realization mirrored in him. They had crossed from curiosity into something real, unshakable. The city outside was quiet, but inside that small moment behind the bar, the world felt infinite. Two people, once strangers in a crowded club, now standing on the edge of forever. And in that unspoken understanding, both knew one truth. Whatever the world brought, they had found each other. The club buzzed with its usual Friday night energy, but tonight felt different. The lights seemed warmer, the music softer, and the laughter somehow more genuine. Amara moved behind the bar with ease, her eyes occasionally catching MJ across the room. He wasn't just a presence tonight. He was her presence, the anchor she had grown to rely on, the person who made the world feel both thrilling and safe at the same time. The usual crowd of admirers lingered, but their interest no longer mattered. MJ's attention had always been subtly hers, but now, everyone could see the difference. There was a quiet glow between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were no longer just two people navigating a crowded club. They were a pair tethered together by trust, care, and love. He approached her behind the bar, leaning casually but intentionally close. "Busy night?" he asked, a teasing smile on his lips. "Always," she replied, her eyes sparkling, "but I've got the best company tonight." MJ chuckled softly, sliding closer. Without a word, he wrapped her in a long, comforting hug, one that drew attention without any need for explanation. The warmth between them was tangible, radiating calm and certainty, and for the first time, Amara realized that the whispers and glances from others couldn't touch them. Nothing could. Patrons noticed, yes, but rather than jealousy or curiosity, there was admiration in their eyes. MJ had chosen her, not because she had sought his attention, but because she had earned his respect, his trust, and ultimately, his heart. And Amara had chosen him in return, not for his reputation, the power he carried, or the allure of his world, but for the man he truly was, steady, kind, and completely devoted. As the night drew to a close, they stood together near the entrance, taking in the soft hum of the city beyond the doors. Their hands brushed, fingers intertwining naturally. No words were needed. The warmth of their embrace, the certainty in their eyes, and the gentle smiles they shared spoke louder than any declaration could. In that moment, surrounded by the soft glow of the club lights, both knew it was forever. Not the kind of forever built on grand gestures or fleeting attraction, but the kind built on trust, patience, and the quiet magic of two hearts finally finding their home in each other. And as the doors closed behind them, MJ whispered softly, "This is just the beginning." Amara smiled, squeezing his hand. "Forever starts now."